Hey everybody, it's Sean and Trey with Reactions to the Classics. Before we get started today, we just wanted to invite you to take a look at our Patreon page where we have all kinds of reward tiers, anywhere from reacting to an entire album to songs, and to support us for as little as $1 a month. It really helps us out.
And you can also check out our Facebook and Discord groups down below. Got a great community of people who love music. And all that to say, y'all, let's get to today's video. What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined again by my dad Sean, and today, Reactions to the Classics, we are up to part 2 of the Beatles Anthology, Disc 2, and you can check out part 1 in the link in the description, but we're just gonna keep rocking with this. We're gonna start with a 12-bar original, and this was never released prior to this disc.
It was not, the original was 6 minutes and 36 seconds long, but they edited it down to 2:55 here, which I was glad. It's fine. It's a little bit repetitive. I mean, that's what it is. It's just an instrumental. That's kind of the point of it. One of the few songs to be credited to all 4 of the guys as well. Flying, an instrumental of Magical Mystery Tour, is also one of those. And Dig It and Christmas Time Is Here Again.
Yeah, and this is just a blues instrumental jam, and it's kind of cool to hear because we never really hear the Beatles go full on blues. I mean, we of course had Your Blues on the White Album,
right?
But nothing like this, and so it was cool. And then we go into take 1 of Tomorrow Never Knows. We get into a bunch of Revolver songs coming up, which I was very pleased with.
I was as well.
Obviously, just a fantastic record, one of my favorites of all time. So, and to hear this song in particular, a song that was so groundbreaking in its infancy, was a neat fly on the wall type of moment.
And for me, it was interesting, not bad. I don't know if you didn't know the song, Trey, and you just flipped to the song, you'd be like, okay.
Yeah, you're like, what's that?
But to be able to hear take 1 of something like this was a nice treat.
It was a slower BPM as well, and it had a more hazy, it was almost like I was floating in the ocean with the vocal and the guitar in there. Quite psychedelic at points, of course not up to par with the original, but it was still cool nonetheless. And then we're gonna go now to Got to Get You Into My Life, our first Paul tune from Revolver on this disc, and it started a little different. It was almost like a droning organ in there, reminded me of motion picture soundtrack off of Radiohead's Kid A record.
Oh, very good. One thing that's interesting, you know, the previous song, we get take 1, now we get take 5, so they're much more advanced in the process. For me, this one was fine. It definitely was more chilled out, not nearly the power of the finished product.
Yeah, vocal mix was definitely more prominent.
Definitely. And that takes us to take 2 of And Your Bird Can Sing. Lennon, if you remember, Trey, later dismissed it, referring to it as another one of my throwaways, fancy paper around an empty box. And Guitar World ranked Harrison's playing on the song at 69 on the list of 100 greatest guitar solos. And I thought that held up here. Even the guitar was fantastic here. This is probably about Marianne Faithfull, Mick Jagger's girlfriend at the time. So I always laugh whenever I hear this song, knowing that it's just John at its finest, taking a shot. What did you think of this?
Oh yeah, and mention laughing. It was just fantastic to hear the guys laughing hysterically.
Oh man, they were just going on, man.
Throughout it, for the song itself, had a bit more punch with the bass line, I thought, than the version we hear on Revolver itself. But the highlight for me was just hearing them chuckle and just seemed to have a good time.
And I think that lends credence. You know, no one's ever really confirmed that it was about Marianne Faithfull, but I think that lends credence that it's very possible that it was.
Possibly. Yeah, and then we're gonna move on now to Taxman, get the Harrison tune. This was take number 11, so as you were mentioning, the taste.
Yes.
This was definitely the most full song up to this point, close to the original. It still had, you know, it wasn't all polished though.
It wasn't as powerful on his vocal or the backing vocals.
It started off with that same 1, 2, 3, like the same counting, but it just didn't live up to the original for me, and it didn't have enough in there to where you could like see the demo or the early takes. So I don't see myself revisiting this one too much, even though it was still a good track.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the guitar, once again, was pretty noteworthy, though. You notice that as a pattern here, how much the guitar is improved when George is playing it in particular on these tracks. From Anthology 1, he's grown tremendously, not just vocally and songwriting-wise, but also instrumentally. And that brings us to Eleanor Rigby, which I was excited to get to, but then I realized it was strings only. And my research told me it was strings only, but Trey, I wasn't smart enough to understand that it just meant strings only. I mean, it was only the instrumental version, which was fine. It was interesting, but I would have much rather had some sort of vocal take of it, even if it was horrible, just to give me a little different look at it.
Yeah, I mean, the strings are some of the most beautiful things you're going to hear, but it would have been cool to get the vocals in there. I mean, we have another instrumental later on in this disc as well, but I mean, if they could have definitely chosen worse instrumentals going in, and then we go to a rehearsal for I'm Only Sleeping.
Yeah, and it is also instrumental, but it's only 41 seconds long. And they and it's got a vibraphone in there.
Yes, first use of the vibraphone from the Beatles, so that was intriguing.
But they go right from that into take one of I'm Only Sleeping. So that was cool because you could see the build. So that was a little different way to approach it.
Yeah, and John intros this song with a very over-the-top, I'm only sleeping, take one, kind of a comical.
Smart aleck, and that's not the exact verbiage I used in my notes, but I'll clean it up. Here's this smart aleck John, which I loved.
Oh, and you didn't have the ADT, so, and just stripped back acoustic guitars.
Only, baby.
So less psychedelic than we hear on the actual record. So I enjoyed this one. I added it to the playlist.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well, and I know we both, this is one of our favorite Beatles songs, which is High Praise. Now we're going to go live to Tokyo, where the crowds were loud, even on this recording, so I imagine they were 100 times louder if you were on stage. Rock and roll music. For me on this one, John sounds very weak. He sounds very tired, but that could be because he couldn't freaking hear himself as well.
Yeah, it was a muddy recording as well.
Yeah, it's rough.
Almost like you were in a basement somewhere hearing them go. And then we go to She's a Woman from Paul, and it just segues right after.
Yeah.
And then the girls really get cheering. So Paul had John outdueled on the cheerometer on this tune, and again, I thought Paul did a solid job as we get to the last live recording that are on Anthology.
Yeah, I thought he did a pretty good job as well. I thought he sounded better than John, but I still thought almost at the end of every verse, he seemed to trail off a little bit. And I would imagine, I've never been a musician standing on a stage with all these people screaming so loud I couldn't hear myself. But I imagine that's somewhat of the effect of that one. Now we're going to come to a 3-song run of Strawberry Fields Forever. We have the demo sequence, then we're going to have take 1, then we're going to have take 7 and the edit piece. So now we finally get to see a song kind of play out and grow. The demo sequence was interesting. Doesn't sound anything like what it was going to sound like later on, because it's just John on there laying some stuff down. What do you think of that part?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the way they sequenced this out to where you could really see how some of the more complex songs that the Beatles did.
How it was raw.
Yeah, it started off just like many of the other tunes they did, and then grew and progressed into something that they and the audience couldn't imagine. So yeah, that demo was very intriguing to hear. And then we go to that take 1 where it does have a more clean guitar and vocal.
It's growing. Man, that's what I liked. Yeah, I even put that. They're starting to work it out. And then we get to take 7 and the edit piece, which was just a tremendous jump from take 1. And remember, it took them 55 hours, guys, to record this one song. So who the heck knows how many hours have gone on between take 1 and 7, right? So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, take 7 was definitely the closest to the version we all know, but that ending coda just put it over the top and differentiate.
Like Ringo got to go all in, baby.
It was one of the more powerful and best drumming performances I've heard from Ringo in my time. So,
and it's too bad we didn't really get to hear that showcased too much in the Beatles' work. I know there's some things, but his drumming really stood out on this particular section here that we're doing, and on the next section that we'll do as well.
I had the exact same thing in my notes. I thought Ringo was a surprise MVP here. And then we're going to move on now to the Penny Lane remix. And this isn't as drastically different.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Compared to the single version. The big difference is going to come at the end. We have a ending differentiation of a instrumental section with some trumpets and some other instruments in there that give it a different flavor.
Yeah, that was exactly what I had. The ending's different, and I think Paul says suitable ending at the end of it.
You're right.
And now we're going to come to a day in the life. This one is the first 2 takes representing the song in its early and pre-orchestral stage. Also take 6. For this, we could do a 15-minute show on this song with what we know about this. Spoiler alert, look away, turn the volume down, but we picked this as number 1 on our favorite Beatles songs of all time. This one is different, obviously, because this is also a complex song, just like Tomorrow Never Knows that we talked about earlier. Paul's part definitely sounds different, and in the middle of this, you get him counting to 20, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you can hear it much more clear than the Sgt. Pepper's version of them in that countdown, and there was some electronic buzz almost on Paul's section, and it just was a bit more stripped back a little bit with the orchestra not as full in there, and then whenever they went towards the end, I was expecting that E chord where they all played it, and then they didn't, and you spoke about the Penny Lane where Paul was talking at the end, and we get that again here. He says something along the lines of, one of the things with doing this, people get a little bit suspicious, kind of, what are you doing? So even they knew at the time, whenever they were coming out with songs from Peppers, how it might be perceived as a little bit out there, but I'm thankful they did.
Yeah, I am as well, and I enjoyed that one, especially just being how well we think of that song to actually get to be a little bit of a fly on the wall in putting this together. But that's going to do it for this part, Trey. If you liked what we had here, give us a big thumbs up. Hit that big red subscribe button. Also, look below for the links for our other parts of the Anthology series, and we'll be back with part 3 of Disc 2 very soon. Thanks a lot, Trey. And until next time, we will see ya.